Here's what to expect in the week ahead. TRADE: The members of the North American Free Trade Agreement gather again in Washington this week to discuss the future of the trade pact. Negotiations have been tense, but two things may take the pressure off this time. The countries are not describing these so-called intercessional talks as an official negotiating round, and they are expected to focus on making progress on areas of agreement, including digital trade and customs, rather than the most tendentious issues. The next official NAFTA negotiating round will be held in Montreal from January 23 to 28. Anna Swanson: Officials from the 164 members of the World Trade Organization converge on Buenos Aires this week for a ministerial conference, their first such high-level meeting in 2 years. While the body is close to announcing an agreement on curbing government fishing subsidies, expectations are low for it to make significant progress in advancing free trade. Instead, the focus will probably be on the posture of the United States under the Trump administration, which has expressed skepticism about the effectiveness of the WTO and similar international organizations. Anna Swanson: Economist Labor Department will release data on Wednesday on consumer prices for November. The low rate of inflation has been a persistent economic mystery in recent months, as falling unemployment and rising economic growth have failed to push up prices. The period of weakness could be nearing its end. Economists surveyed by Bloomberg expect the report on Wednesday to show that prices rose 2.2% in November from a year earlier, above the Federal Reserve's target of 2%. But the steadier core measure of inflation, which excludes volatile food and energy prices, has remained more muted. Ben Castleman: Janet L. Yellen will most likely oversee her last major decision as Federal Reserve Chairwoman on Wednesday. The Fed's Policymaking Committee, which meets Tuesday and Wednesday, is widely expected to announce an increase in its benchmark interest rate for a third time this year. The expected decision would lift the rate to a range of 1.25 to 1.5%. The Fed has been raising rates despite the weakness of inflation because unemployment has fallen to a low level and job growth remains strong. After the Fed's policy announcement, Ms. Yellen will hold her final news conference as Fed chairwoman. She plans to leave the Fed in early February. Binyamin Appelbaum: Taxes Loan Public Conference Committee meeting on the proposed tax cut legislation will be held in the Capitol on Wednesday afternoon, when Republicans and Democrats from the House and Senate will gather to publicly debate a bill that the GOP hopes to get to President Trump's desk by the end of the year. The meeting, which begins at 2 p.m., is expected to feature Democrats airing their grievances against the legislation and Republicans espousing the merits of the proposals that have passed the House and Senate. Lawmakers are required to have one such public gathering, but most of the real negotiating about the final details of the tax plan will take place among Republicans behind closed doors. Alan Rappaport: Economist Draghi, the president of the European Central Bank, is not expected to make any major announcements on monetary policy when he holds his last news conference of the year on Thursday in Frankfurt. In late October, the central bank announced a significant reduction in its stimulus measures for the Eurozone economy, and it would be a surprise if Mr. Draghi signaled any further steps so soon. But analysts will be paying close attention to the latest estimates for growth and inflation by the central bank's economists, which may offer clues about policymakers' view of the Eurozone economy. Jack Ewing: The Bank of England was widely expected to keep its benchmark interest rate steady on Thursday after it raised its main rate last month for the first time in a decade. That rate increase to 0.5% came as the central bank tried to strike a balance between moderate growth and rising prices, particularly as the value of the pound has declined sharply in the 18 months since Britain's vote to leave the European Union, a process known as Brexit. Chad Bradock: Nolagith Federal Communications Commission will vote on Thursday on a proposal to repeal landmark broadband regulations known as net neutrality, rules that ensure an open internet. The plan, put forth by the Commission's chairman, Ajit Pai, is expected to pass on a 3-2 party line vote. The reversal of the Barack Obama-era rules would free broadband providers to create new pricing tiers for the delivery of web content to consumers and to charge for faster and better quality video streaming. Mr. Pai has proposed that the broadband companies reveal their business practices and that the Federal Trade Commission police the industry for anti-competitive behavior. Cecilia Kang: Economist Thursday, the Census Bureau is scheduled to report retail sales in November. The sales data will indicate whether the Thanksgiving holiday shopping blitz at the end of the month was as strong as many industry estimates predicted it had been. Retail sales rose in October, reflecting a robust economy and high consumer confidence. Michael Corkery markets investors shouldn't fear the so-called quadruple witching on Friday. The third Friday of the final month of every quarter brings the expiration of 4 types of derivative contracts: stock index futures, stock index options, single stock futures, and single stock options. Options give buyers the right to buy or sell stocks at predetermined prices in the future, while futures contracts obligate the buyer to purchase an asset at a set price and date. Investors are warned that volatility can increase during a quadruple witching as traders adjust their positions. Yet despite the ominous-sounding name, volatility hasn't picked up on such occasions in recent years. The Chicago Board Options Exchange Volatility Index, otherwise known as Wall Street's Fear Gauge, or VIX, has declined more than half the time on such days since 2015, according to FactSet. Stephen Grosser.